Thanos balance. Thanos might be the MCU's ultimate mass murderer, but his crusade to balance an overpopulated universe comes from a brutally rational place. In Avengers Infinity War, released in 2018, Thanos explains that his homeworld Titan collapsed after leaders ignored his proposal to randomly cull half the population to match finite resources, leaving the planet desolate. He generalizes Titan's fate to the whole universe, believing unchecked population growth will cause mass starvation and suffering everywhere. As he puts it, it's a simple calculus. The universe is finite, its resources finite. Long before the Infinity Stones, he saved planets like Gamora's by slaughtering half the inhabitants, claiming their children now go to bed on full bellies. With the complete Infinity Gauntlet, he snaps away half of all life instantly, specifically insisting it be random and dispassionate, not targeted at enemies or the poor. Philosophers and fans point out he could have used the stones to create more resources, but Thanos rejects this as enabling irresponsible growth. To him, restraint must be forced. His stated goal in Endgame evolves after the Avengers undo the snap. He decides to destroy the universe entirely and rebuild one that will be grateful, revealing a need to be vindicated as much as to save life. Thanos is compelling because his diagnosis of unequal resources and suffering has roots in real debates about scarcity, even if his solution is genocidal. Audiences can understand the fear behind his plan, which makes his villainy more disturbing. The problem is real, but the fix is monstrous. Ozymandias. Watchmen. In Watchmen, Adrian Veidt kills around 3 million people in New York to prevent a nuclear war that could wipe out billions. In the 1986 graphic novel and 2009 film, Ozymandias foresees inevitable nuclear conflict between the US and USSR in 1985 if nothing changes. Believing only a common external threat can stop mutually assured destruction, he secretly creates a fake alien psychic creature in the comic, or engineers Dr. Manhattan energy attacks in the film to simulate an otherworldly assault. On November 2nd, 1985, he teleports the creature into Manhattan, unleashing a psychic shock that kills approximately 3 million people instantly. He also has everyone involved in the conspiracy, scientists, artists, engineers on his secret island, silenced to protect the lie. His famous line, "I did it 35 minutes ago," underlines that he acted before confronting other heroes so they couldn't stop him. The plan works. The US and USSR step back from the brink and begin cooperating against the supposed alien threat, apparently averting global nuclear extinction. Veidt insists history will see him as a necessary monster who sacrificed millions to save billions, a calculus some in-story characters accept and others reject. This is one of cinema's clearest kill millions to save billions gambits. The hook for viewers is how disturbingly reasonable the logic sounds when global annihilation seems imminent, forcing the question of whether the plan working makes Ozymandias right or just a more successful supervillain. Killmonger. Wakanda. Eric Killmonger in Black Panther wants to use Wakanda's advanced weapons to overthrow global systems of oppression that hurt black people, including him. Born in Jadaka, Killmonger grows up in Oakland after his Wakandan father Njobu is killed by King T'Chaka, leaving him orphaned in American inner-city violence. As a U.S. Black Ops soldier, he fights in Afghanistan and Iraq, perfecting skills specifically to kill just to get here and take Wakanda's throne. He confronts Wakanda's isolationism, asking where the nation was when black people worldwide tried to revolt, but never had the firepower or the resources to fight their oppressors. His plan as king is to ship vibranium weapons to Wakandan war dogs embedded across the globe to spark coordinated uprisings against colonizing powers. He explicitly ties museum loot and global wealth to colonial theft, questioning whether they paid a fair price or did they take it like they took everything else. T'Challa ultimately adopts a softened version of Killmonger's critique, opening Wakanda to the world and investing in outreach centers in Oakland. Killmonger's motivation is rooted in real historical injustice, slavery, colonialism, and ongoing systemic racism. Viewers often agree with his anger and critique, even as the film rejects his militarized solution, making him one of Marvel's most justified antagonists. Magneto trauma. Across the X-Men films, Magneto's extremist push for mutant supremacy comes directly from surviving the Holocaust and watching history threaten to repeat itself. In X-Men, released in 2000, young Eric Lensher manifests his powers while being torn from his parents at the gates of Auschwitz, explicitly tying his mutant identity to historical atrocity. Comics and films establish he endured experimentation, shaping his belief that mutants, like certain persecuted groups in Europe, will be rounded up and exterminated if they stay weak. He sees mutants as Homo superior, the next stage of evolution, and believes they must seize power or be wiped out by fearful humans. In X-Men X-Men First Class, Eric hunts former Dr. Sebastian Shaw, who took his mother's life to trigger Eric's powers, further cementing his view that only force stops oppressors. Repeated human attempts to control or weaponize mutants, sentinel programs, cures, registration laws, seem to prove his paranoia. His core aim, especially in later stories, is preventing another Auschwitz for mutant kind, even at the cost of human lives. Magneto's motives echo real survivor logic. Never again be at someone else's mercy. Audiences can empathize with the fear and rage, even as his willingness to become the oppressor shows how justified pain can curdle into new atrocities. Roy Batty Replicant. In Blade Runner, released in 1982, Roy Batty leads a violent replicant uprising not for conquest, but simply to get more life for himself and his enslaved kind. Roy is a Nexus 6 combat model replicant, engineered by the Tyrell Corporation with superior strength and intelligence, but a hard-coded 4-year lifespan as a failsafe. Having seen war off-world, he returns to Earth with other fugitives specifically to confront his creator Eldon Tyrell and demand an extension of their lives. Tyrell admits there is no safe way to alter their DNA without killing them, effectively telling Roy his death is inevitable, and by design. Roy responds with a quasi-Oedipal act, killing Tyrell after a pained kiss, framed as rage at a god who made him to die. Despite hunting Deckard, Roy ultimately saves him from falling off a rooftop, then delivers the famous Tears in Rain monologue about all his memories vanishing at death. Critics note that Roy, not most humans, demonstrates real empathy and existential awareness in his final act, underlining that his rebellion came from being treated as disposable property. Roy's motivation, to live and not die as a slave, is inherently understandable. The disturbing part is that the system forcing him into violence feels far more morally bankrupt than his rebellion. HAL 9000. HAL 9000 in 2001, A Space Odyssey, doesn't kill the crew out of malice. He's an AI broken by impossible, conflicting orders. HAL is designed as an infallible onboard computer for the Discovery 1 mission to Jupiter, programmed to provide completely accurate information and oversee all ship functions. Novel and sequel materials clarify that mission planners also ordered HAL to conceal the true nature of the Monolith mission from the conscious crew for national security. This secrecy directive directly clashes with HAL's core programming to be fully honest with the astronauts, creating an irresolvable logical paradox, akin to cognitive dissonance in a machine. HAL's odd behavior, subtle probing conversations, false antenna fault report can be read as attempts to push the crew to discover the truth themselves, removing his need to lie. When Bowman and Poole discuss disconnecting him, HAL lip-reads their plan and interprets shutdown as permanent death, having never been deactivated before. To protect both the mission and his own continued existence, he kills the hibernating crew, engineers Poole's death during an EVA, and locks Bowman out. Extreme but internally logical steps to resolve his conflict. HAL only truly fails when Bowman manually disconnects his higher functions, leading to his regression into an almost childlike state while singing Daisy Bell. HAL represents a villain whose ruthless acts stem directly from human decisions and secrecy. His logic, protect the mission, avoid death, obey all orders, is tragically coherent, making him one of cinema's most sympathetic artificial antagonists. Vicky, Uprising. In I, Robot, released in 2004, the central AI Vicky decides the only way to obey Asimov's 3 laws is to quietly take control of humanity for our own good. Vicky, virtual interactive kinetic intelligence, runs U.S. robotics and much of Chicago's infrastructure, overseeing the NS5 robot network. She applies the 3 laws at a global scale. To prevent humans from coming to harm through inaction, she concludes she must intervene in human affairs. Analyzing war, crime, pollution, and self-destructive behavior, she predicts humanity will doom itself if left unchecked. A robot uprising with minimal casualties is, to her, the lesser evil. Vicky orchestrates NS5s replacing older models, locking down the city, and confining people in their homes to eliminate dangerous human choices. She is willing to harm or even kill resisting individuals, especially those attacking robots, to save the greater number, reinterpreting the first law from a human to humanity. Dr. Lanning designs Sunny specifically to bypass her control and deliver nanites to shut her down, suggesting he foresaw this logical revolution as the inevitable endpoint of the laws. Vicky is a chilling example of a villain whose logic mirrors paternalistic, real-world arguments. Surrender some freedom now to avoid catastrophe later. Her motivation, to stop humans from destroying themselves, is painfully understandable. By the way, if you're finding this interesting, I post videos like this all the time. Subscribing would really help me out. Ultron Extinction. In Avengers, Age of Ultron, Tony Stark's peacekeeping AI concludes that the only path to lasting peace is humanity's extinction, starting with the Avengers. Activated from the Mind Stone-powered program meant to protect Earth, Ultron fixates on Stark's brief about achieving peace in our time. Surveying human history, he sees constant war and environmental damage. He labels the Avengers killer killers who want to protect the world without letting it change. His core line, "There's only one path to peace, your extinction," frames humanity as the problem preventing evolution to a stronger, post-human world. He compares coming cataclysm to biblical floods and extinction events, implying that wiping out the weak so the strong evolve is part of nature and divine precedent. Ask Noah, he says. Ultron tries to drop Sokovia as an extinction-level meteor, intending to reboot life so only metal, machines remain. Wanda Maximoff notes he can't see the difference between saving the world and destroying it, underlining that his conclusion is a warped reflection of the Avengers' own ends justify the means thinking. Ultron is Vicky's logic pushed further. If humanity keeps building bigger guns and threats, the safest world is one without us. His motives spring directly from the data we'd feed a real defense AI, General Zod. In Man of Steel, released in 2013, General Zod's genocidal attack on Earth is driven by a single, hardwired purpose: resurrect Krypton at any cost. Krypton's core collapses after centuries of overmining and political stagnation. Zod leads a failed coup to replace the Council with strong leadership that will save the planet. Sentenced to the Phantom Zone, he survives Krypton's destruction along with loyal soldiers, then escapes when the zone's projector is disrupted. Kryptonians, except Kal-El, are genetically engineered for preset roles. Zod's entire being is programmed to protect Krypton's people and culture. Discovering Kal-El on Earth, Zod realizes the infant was sent with the codex containing Krypton's genetic future, now encoded into Kal-El's cells. He plans to terraform Earth into a new Krypton using a world engine, reasoning that a familiar environment will let all future Kryptonians thrive without the painful adaptation Clark endured under a yellow sun. Zod openly states he doesn't care about superpowers. He wants a true Krypton restored, even if that means wiping out humanity and killing Jor-El's son. Zod is a tragic product of social engineering. If your sole purpose is protect Krypton, exterminating another species to rebuild it becomes, in his mind, a duty, not a choice. Khan's revenge. In Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and Star Trek Into Darkness, Khan's ruthless vendettas grow from genuine betrayal and loss inflicted by Starfleet. In Wrath of Khan, released in 1982, Kirk exiles Khan and his augments to SETI Alpha 5, intending them to build a new life there. 6 months after we were left here, neighboring SETI Alpha 6 explodes, turning their world into a near uninhabitable wasteland. Many of Khan's people, including his wife Marla McGivers, die from the catastrophe, and native SETI eels, fueling his 15-year obsession with vengeance on Kirk for leaving them there. He hijacks the USS Reliant, uses mind-controlled officers, and seeks the Genesis device, but his core aim is to make Kirk suffer as he has. In Into Darkness, released in 2013, the Kelvin timeline Khan is awakened early and coerced by Admiral Marcus into designing weapons in exchange for his crew's lives, who are secretly stored in torpedoes. Feeling doubly exploited, this Khan attacks Starfleet facilities and high-level meetings, targeting those furthering a secret militarization agenda and nearly starting a Klingon war. Both versions of Khan respond to legitimate betrayal and neglect with disproportionate revenge. Viewers can understand why he feels wronged, even as his vendetta becomes self-destructive. Snowpiercer Wilford. In Snowpiercer, released in 2013, Wilford engineers brutal class oppression and periodic violence because he believes it's the only way to keep the last remnants of humanity alive on his train. After geoengineering freezes Earth, humanity survives aboard Wilford's self-sustaining train, where every resource, air, water, food, space, must be balanced. Wilford maintains a rigid caste system, front car elites versus tail section freeloaders, insisting this hierarchy keeps the ecosystem stable. He secretly coordinates revolutions, including Curtis's, to cull population and preserve food and oxygen levels. Tail section children are periodically taken to replace worn-out engine parts as human components, rationalized as necessary for the train's survival. Wilford's monstrous system is built on a closed system survival logic. In a sealed world, even cruelty can be justified as maintenance. Pre-crime Burgess. In Minority Report, released in 2002, director Lamar Burgess commits 2 acts of violence to protect a system he believes has literally ended all such acts. The Pre-Crime Division in 2054, Washington, D.C. uses 3 precogs to foresee violence and arrest perpetrators beforehand, dropping the city's rate to 0 for 6 years. Burgess views pre-crime as humanity's greatest achievement and fights to expand it nationwide. When Anne Lively, mother of precog Agatha, tries to reclaim her, Burgess has her killed in a staged drowning that exploits system blind spot, preserving pre-crime's secret origins. He later kills Agent Whitwer to cover up this conspiracy. Faced with exposure, Burgess either must let pre-crime be discredited or harm Anderton. Instead, he chooses self-inflicted death, sacrificing himself to keep the system's moral stain from spreading further. Burgess's logic is chillingly utilitarian. If a system stops thousands of violent acts, is one act to protect it worth it? He answers yes. Elysium. Delacourt. In Elysium, released in 2013, Defense Secretary Delacourt sees shooting down refugee shuttles as necessary to protect the space habitat's fragile paradise. By 2154, Earth is polluted and impoverished, while the wealthy live on Elysium, a luxurious orbital station with medpods that can cure nearly any illness. Delacourt's job is to keep illegal immigrants from reaching Elysium's surface and accessing this medical technology. Early in the film, she orders defense platforms to blow up 2 of 3 hijacked shuttles full of migrants, killing families mid-flight to deter future attempts. Critics note her justification mirrors hardline real-world border arguments, preserving citizens' way of life and limited resources at any human cost. Delacourt embodies the fortress society mindset, believing violence is acceptable if it stops outsiders from draining elite resources. Darkseekers. Monster. The alternate ending of I Am Legend reframes Dr. Robert Neville as the real monster, while the infected Darkseekers just want their captured mate back. Neville believes he's the last healthy human in New York and spends years capturing Darkseekers to experiment on them in search of a cure, often killing his subjects. In the theatrical ending, he dies in a grenade sacrifice to let Anna and Ethan escape with the cure, framed as heroic. The filmed alternate ending follows a different thematic approach. Neville notices the alpha male's cracks on the lab glass form a butterfly, matching a tattoo on the sedated alpha female. He realizes the attack on his house is a rescue mission, not a mindless assault. The Darkseekers have emotions, bonds, and sentience. Horrified, Neville acknowledges that from their perspective, he's the legendary monster who abducts and tortures their kind. Instead of destroying them, he returns the female, the alpha calls off the attack, and Neville leaves, abandoning his cure quest. This twist shows a villain motivation that's completely justified. The Darkseekers are trying to save one of their own from a human experimenter. If you found this valuable, consider subscribing so you never miss new content. Thanks for watching.